Good evening. First, may I ask that in this evening class that you be here at about 20 minutes of 8 so that the meditation can begin at 7:45. And that in the morning class that you be here at 20 minutes of 10 so that the meditation can begin at 9:45. And because this is the evening class and some of you are in our work for the first time, let me explain the reason for that. The meditation is the most important part of our work. Actually, as time goes on, you will learn that if that meditation is well done, the rest of the class need not take place. You can learn all that needs to be learned in that 15 minutes of meditation. And someday you will. More especially if the meditation is conducted by someone who has attained a depth of realization in meditation. Now, whether this is your first class or your 21st, let me say to you, meditation is the most important part of our work, transcending in importance even the lessons. The lessons themselves are secondary to meditation. Why then do we have the lessons? In order to make meditation possible. Without these lessons, students will find it almost impossible to attain meditation or to attain results in meditation. While it has been recognized for many years that meditation is an important part of living, it has been practiced so little in the Occident that one of our large publishers, in investigating the subject, learned that there is not a book published on the subject of meditation which may be recommended as absolutely correct or adequate as a textbook on the subject. And the reason is that in the Occident, meditation has really not been known for a long time, even though the word has been known. And in the Orient, meditation does not mean what it means to us. And so the Oriental books on meditation do not fit our need. Now, in the earliest days of my work, although I had no training along this line and no way of knowing anything about meditation, the Father revealed to me the importance of the subject and started me on a search. And in 1932, it came to me so clearly that meditation was the actual way of life that I began in earnest a search for the secret of meditation. Now, I searched in the few books that are available on the subject, some of them of the Occident and some of the Orient. But I could not find that which I was seeking. And then, one day, the idea presented itself to me to sit in quiet, in silence, and see what would happen. And of course, I'm sure you know nothing happened, but just exactly nothing. And later in the day, I tried it again with the same result. Finally, I got to the point where I meditated 8 times a day, anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes each time, with no result. That is, no result of which I was aware. But after 8 months, while sitting in meditation one morning, I felt that click, that pulling in, that deep breath. The chest went up and the stomach went in, and I knew that something of a different nature had happened, and it was nothing more than that happened. But, strangely enough, the rest of my morning was more harmonious, more peaceful, more successful than anything I had previously known. It was really a morning of joy. It seemed to wear off about noontime, and I tried several times during the rest of the day to restore that morning's experience or renew it without any success. It was several days before I achieved it again, and then a couple of days later again, and eventually twice in one day out of 8 or 10 attempts. But this I noticed. When it did happen, even though it was nothing more than this deep breath, this chest coming up and stomach going in, even though it was nothing more than that, it changed my day. To begin with, I found within a short time that it changed my income. My income began to increase, and the harmonies in my experience with others increased, and my health increased. That is, my feeling of health increased. There was nothing wrong with my health, but the feeling of well-being increased. Soon after that, I learned another thing. If I left my home in the morning before that click, my morning wasn't very good. If I didn't achieve it again in the afternoon or evening, it also wasn't very good. But if I achieved it, everything was fine. Now, at that moment, I could not have told you why. I could only have told you that the meditation and the achieving of this click, realization, deep breath, produced effects in my outer life. But as I continued, and as the days approached when I could achieve this virtually at will, then the discovery was made that when that happened, a contact was established with my source, with the infinite invisible, with that which we call God. And then I saw a great thing. We, as human beings, are cut off from God. We, as human beings, have no God guidance, no God direction, no God maintenance or sustenance. We are earning our living by the sweat of our brow, by our physical or mental energies. We are supporting our bodies either with food or medicines or vitamins or fresh air or exercise. We are living on effects, one effect living upon another effect. And doing this only for 80 years, and maybe 10 or 15 or 20, and then being completely worn out and ending in the grave. Now, in my experience, I met a few men who were exceptions to that rule. I met one man when he was about in his 90th year, and I thought that he was about 55, not more than that, if anything, something less. And that man was a miracle. I never knew a man as active physically and mentally as that man. A man who was then conducting a newspaper column, turning out an average of 6 or 8 books a year, and conducting a metaphysical practice made up of about 3,000 patients all of the time, at 90 years of age. I knew that man until he passed on at 97 years and 9 months. And then I knew another man, Christian Science teacher, 99 years of age, a man you would never have guessed to be over 60, a man living on one-night stands of travel, giving lectures all over this country, all over the world at 90, teaching a class every year, giving lectures every night and sometimes in the daytime, also conducting a tremendous healing practice, and not a sign or trace of age. I knew another man, New York City, a man who at 92 years of age was made a lecturer and started traveling the world, giving lectures in one-night stands. I met him one day. I'd known this man for 20-odd years, but I met him when he was in his 95th year, and I wish you could have known that man. Not a sign, not a trace of age anywhere in his body or mind. And you might know that you get curious when you meet men like that. What makes it? Why is it? Only one of these men used the word meditation, and the others used the word communion with God, living by prayer. In other words, they were demonstrating that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. They were demonstrating that you do not live by the books you read, or by the food you eat, or the exercise you take, even though in some measure you'll continue to take those, but that your life and energy and vitality and mentality are sustained by your contact with an inner source, an invisible source. And so that became the foundation of my work. As far back as 1933 and 4, I was meditating every hour of the day and most of the hours of the night. By 1935 or 6, the result of it was that I was sleeping only 3.5 hours out of 24 hours and maintaining my work, my practice, my reading, my study, and even attended Harvard University in between. Now, I was sustained not by any exercise, not by any special foods, but by this continuous meditation. And from then on, that has constituted the major part of my life. Now, everything that we will learn in the message of the Infinite Way has come to me out of meditation. Everything I teach was given to me in meditation. I did not receive it from books. Some of it I have found in books after it was given me in meditation. The books that I have read since this spiritual message was given to me. In meditation, the spiritual impulses, the messages themselves, the words, the letters, the books have been given to me. Things that I knew nothing about when I opened my mouth were poured through my mouth. I'll give you an illustration of that. On the first night of a class in San Francisco, when I had spent most of the day in meditation and knew nothing of what the class was to be about, knew nothing of what would be taught that evening. I received about 6 o'clock that inner click that told me contact was made. And so I went to this metaphysical center where the class was conducted, sat up as I am here, and found there were no words. And so I said to the class, let us meditate. And we meditated for a few minutes. And then I said, my conscious oneness with God constitutes my oneness with all spiritual being and idea. And I'd never heard those words before or thought such a thought in all of my life, and I was astounded. Now what have I said, and what does it mean? And if you read the book Metaphysical Notes, you will find that the entire subject of that entire class is my conscious oneness with God constitutes my oneness with all spiritual being and idea. And now you want to know what of it. I'm going to tell you what of it. That is a spiritual principle of life, and if you demonstrate it, you will never again need a lesson of any kind, or a teacher of any kind, or anyone on earth to be with you at any time. You will have achieved the ultimate realization. If or when you make a conscious contact with God, you will find that you will have contact with every individual on the face of the globe who can or need play any part in your life. And you will have contact with everything, with every thought, with every idea, with all things necessary to your unfoldment. As a result of that one spiritual unfoldment, I have been able to show forth to our students that without ever leaving this country, without ever thinking of foreign countries, that one day in England a magazine published an article on the infinite way, a magazine of which I'd never heard, written by a man of whom I had never heard, and who had never met me and knew nothing further than he read the book, The Infinite Way. Someone in this country sent it to him as a gift, and it struck him so forcibly that he was compelled to write this editorial on it. And I might say to you that it's the finest thing that I know of that has ever been written on the book, The Infinite Way. And the result of it was that so many calls came throughout the British Commonwealth for that book that the second largest publisher in Great Britain wrote and asked me if he might publish a British edition. Can you imagine a publisher asking an author if he might publish an edition? Why, authors sit at publishers' doorsteps begging and pleading for such things, especially such a publisher as this one. And he did publish a British edition, and later he asked, could he publish another book? And he did, Living the Infinite Way. And he has since published 3 editions of The Infinite Way and 2 editions of Living the Infinite Way. Now, I, as a human being, had no more to do with that experience than you had. I have done nothing but make my spiritual contact in each meditation, and then those things happened from outside. And of course that isn't the end of all the wonders, because a publisher in Holland decided that he would like to publish a Dutch translation, and a publisher in Switzerland decided he would like to publish a German translation for all of the German-speaking countries. And a lady in London decided that her friends in Sweden ought to know about the infinite way, and we now have a tremendous group of students in Sweden, and so forth and so on. And I say to you, sincerely, that I, as a human being, had no more to do with those experiences than you had. They were experiences that were brought to my doorstep. My conscious union with God resulted in that oneness or at-one-ment or union with those necessary to this unfoldment. I have gone further with our students and shown them that in classes like this, look around you and ask your neighbors sometime or other whether I had anything to do with your being here, whether I sent for you, or whether I knew you, or whether I advertised for you. And you will agree that of all the people in the world who had nothing to do with your being here, I certainly had the least to do. But you are here. And that means that my conscious union with God brought me into spiritual contact with you who were ready for this message. Now, that is all of the activity I need. A conscious union with God, maintained and sustained day after day, night after night. And what happened? I am spiritually maintained so that even if I have 2 hours sleep, that is plenty in a 24-hour period, and really I work all of the hours that I'm awake. The Spirit sustains and feeds and nourishes this body. Certainly I take food, and plenty of it, because I enjoy it, but there have been long periods when I have required very little of it. I have known as long a period as 8 months to go by when I ate nothing but a few vegetables each day. The Spirit was so strong in power that nothing else was necessary at that time. At other times I have periods of 2 weeks or 2 months when very little goes into my system except a few vegetables or a few fruits. At other times my eating is as normal and as abundant as yours. But never at any time since 1933 or 4 have I slept more than 2.5 to 4 hours out of a 24-hour period. And it has been a joyous experience without any sense of tiredness or weariness in any form. In every way, then, the demonstration has been made, the proof of it has been shown to our students, that a conscious union with God is sufficient. A union with God is a union with the spiritual center of your being. And this explains the healing work in the infinite way. In our healing work, we never address our patients. We never use the word you. We never mention in our treatment the name of the patient. And I'll tell you one good reason: we don't know the names of half of them. And if we did, we wouldn't identify them with the right bodies. We never use the name of a patient in our treatment, nor do we ever address a treatment to you, or he, or she, or it. How then does it reach you? You ask for help. You write for it, telegraph, cable, telephone. Later on, you don't do any of those things. You just reach out in the Spirit and make contact. But in the beginning, you will write to me, or cable me, or telephone. And in doing that, you have made contact with God. because I'm not listening. It is God that you reach. I am in my communion with God, and so I have no awareness of you. But your contact with consciousness results in consciousness revealing itself to you in the healing that you have reached out for. And then sometimes you write me what a beautiful healing it was, and I haven't received your letter or your cable, or haven't known who it was that telephoned. Sometimes I do, but it isn't necessary. I never have wanted to know who was asking me for help or what they were asking help for. Never do I know what you're asking help for, even when you write it to me. That's one part of your letter that isn't read. It makes no difference to me whether you are seeking mental, moral, physical, or financial help. It's of no consequence to me because I haven't the power to give it to you. My contact is with God. And because you have reached out, you are receiving God. God contact, God awareness, and that appears to you in the form of the help that you've asked for. Although, as you so well know, very many times you receive help in a way that you didn't think to ask for, but you got it just the same. Now, I know nothing about treating you for health, heart, liver, lungs. I know nothing about treating you for supply. I shudder at such things. They violate something inside of me. I know only one thing, that you want to know God. You may think that you want a better digestion. You may think that you want companionship or supply, but as far as I'm concerned, I know if you got them, you wouldn't be very much happier than you are now. And so, to me, there is no purpose in making you well or rich or getting you a home. My object is to bring to you God consciousness. Then if you have God consciousness, it will make no difference if you lose your family or lose your fortune or lose your employment or lose your home. You will still find that God's grace is your sufficiency at all times. Remember, it isn't only Mr. Rickenbacker that may find himself out in the middle of the Pacific where his checkbook is no good to him and where the restaurants are of no avail. You may find yourself in some desert experience or wilderness experience or ocean experience and be mighty glad that you have a consciousness of the presence of God, for then you may be assured that you will be fed and housed and clothed and secured until such time as you are back on your own beam again. In every class that has been held from that minute to this, I can tell you the same thing, that when I went to the class, I knew nothing of what the subject was to be. Nothing. And yet, when I came to the platform, whatever it was to be came forth. And you'll always notice it on the first page of the manuscripts, and then you'll notice that all the way through those class manuscripts, that theme is developed and unfolded and revealed in a fuller degree. So then, in this work, meditation becomes the most important thing. Meditation, the ability to contact your inner self. The Master has said that when the inner and the outer are no longer the inner and the outer, but have become one, then you will find yourself in the kingdom of God. That is true. We have an inner self, but that word self is spelt with a capital S. because the inner self of me is the inner self of you. There is only one self. So whatever is true of me and my real being is true of you in your real being. But then there is an outer self called Joel, or Mary, or William, or Violet. And that is a sense of separation from God. That is very much like the branch of the tree that has been cut off from the tree. From the moment it is cut off, it begins to wither and die. All human beings are branches cut off from a tree, and from the moment they're born, they begin to wither and die. And by the time they reach 30, 40, 50, 60, or 70, they're all ready for the death. But they're dying all the time. From the moment of birth, they're racing on toward the grave. Now then, when an individual finds that God, the center of their being, the source of their being, is within them, as the Master taught, the effort is made to contact it, to get at one with it, to be connected with it. And it is through meditation that this can be achieved. Then you are no longer living the life cut off from God, but it is a branch that is connected with the tree and is fed from within. Then in that case you will find that your physical health, your mental capacities continue on long, long beyond the human span. And as in the case of these three men of whom I just spoke a few minutes ago, you never die. You just pass from this plane of existence into your next awareness. None of these three men died. All of these three men just closed their eyes one night and fell asleep and walked on into their next experience without having experienced 1 minute of disease, of pain, of weakness, of old age. Now, I could tell you dozens of such experiences of men and women I have met in my 27 years of this work. But I've seen enough to know that every individual who begins spiritual work begins to live a life of contact with their source. And it is only a matter then of degree how far they carry their realization of oneness. God, or our true self, is at the center of our own being, and we can make contact with it. And when we do, the issues of life flow out into expression. All of this is revealed in the Master's teaching, where he reveals to us that I have meat ye know not of. If you ask me for water, I can give you water. Not drawing with a bucket. No. I can give you water from within me that will spring up in you into life eternal. I am the bread. I am the wine. I am the water. Well, he wasn't a loaf of baker's bread, you know, and he wasn't a cask of wine, nor a reservoir of water. He was speaking symbolically of that inner source of all good. And he knew how to let it flow out from him so that you might be benefited. His was a life of prayer and communion. he would go away for 40 days and pray and commune. We do not know of the days and nights of his inner prayers and communion. And what was he praying for? He didn't need health, and he didn't need supply, and he didn't need a home, and he didn't need companionship. Now what was he praying for, and what was he communing for? Well, he just had no reason at all. He was just praying and communing, that was all. He was just living in this interior of his own being, communing with the infinite source of his being and letting it flow out to us. He had no need for any demonstration, and we learn in our practitioner classes that we have no needs. I have not yet seen a person attain the ability to meditate and contact their inner source who ever again had a need of their own. I have never known one that had to pray for their own supply, or pray for their own health, or pray for their own companionship, or give themselves any treatment. All of the praying they did was for the benefit of those who came to them. Their own supply was always met as it was needed. Their own home appeared as it was needed. Their own companionships appeared as it was needed. There was no need of praying for anything. And so you too will find that the moment you achieve the ability to commune, to meditate, to contact your inner source, you will never again be concerned about any demonstration for yourself. You will find that you're being called on by others, and it will be necessary to give them the meat of life, the bread of life, the wine of life, the water of life, but you will have no need yourself. Whatever your needs are will be taken care of without your taking thought, without your praying, without your treating. That is why in this work, students soon realize that so far as they are concerned, they have no more demonstration to make. But whatever demonstration they must make is for the benefit of their students or their patients or the others who come to them. Now then, it is for this reason that meditation plays so important a part in our experience. In all of the Infinite Way writings, you will either find chapters on meditation, prayer, or communion. In our monthly letter, you will find some reference to prayer, meditation, or communion every month for the reason that nothing else is important but that. Everything else is secondary to that ability. Do you not see that we only need books and teachings and teachers to help us achieve conscious contact with God, and that when we have that, we have no further need of books or teachers or teachings? None. The Father within us, He doeth the works. The Father within us knoweth our need before we do. Why don't we all have it? We have no contact with the Father within. And therefore, we must get out in the world and demonstrate for ourselves. Some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with teachings where you tell God what you would like and what day you would like it on and insist on delivery. I suppose there's nothing wrong about that if you haven't a God. But if you have a God that knoweth your need and whose good pleasure it is to give it to you, if your God is an infinite intelligence, what do you need to tell it? If your God is an infinite power, what do you have to ask? If your God is an omnipresence, why do you have to go anywhere for it? Either to the mountain in Jerusalem or the temple in Jerusalem or anywhere else, except where you at any and every moment happen to be. That is where you contact God, where you are. So we do need books, we do need teachers, we need teachings, but only for one purpose: to lead us back to contact with the kingdom of God within us. And after that, if we want a book, we can write it, because we can close our eyes and turn to the Father and say, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth," and God will write a new book for you and in you and through you. And if you need a new book every week, I can, by demonstration, prove to you that God can write a new book every week in you and through you and for you. And not by reason of education and not by reason of experience, but by reason of the divine gift pouring through any individual who opens themselves to it. And if you want to compose music, it is the same thing. If you want to write books on other subjects, it is the same way. Once you have made your contact with your inner source, everything will be added unto you, even customers coming to buy your product, regardless of what your product may be. Or I might make an exception of some few things that we think about but don't speak about. No, I actually had a man come to me one time who had been refused help by a metaphysician because he was working for a brewery. And it was his business to go into saloons and buy beer for all those who were at the bar. But he was a sick man, sick with ulcers, and he needed help. And he didn't know how to give up his position because he didn't know where else to turn for one. Through this meditation, you will soon realize not to judge your neighbor. Certainly not judge him by appearances. And so I undertook to help this man, and he responded very well in losing his pains. But it was less than 2 weeks when he came and said, "Well, my firm has written me I don't have to buy beer for anyone anymore. They think their line is well enough established so that we don't have to do that." Fine. The following month he wrote that a chain of stores had sent for him and offered him a position as window trimmer so that he no longer had to have business dealings with these saloons. And so his demonstration of being moved out of an uncongenial atmosphere was achieved through the same power of prayer that has lifted gamblers out of their work and others who were unhappy in their immediate associations. It makes no difference to God where you are, even if you are making your bed in hell. It makes no difference to God if you are in the valley of the shadow of death. Only one thing matters. Can you make the contact? If you make the contact, you will be lifted out of any hell, out of any death or any degree of death. And therein lies the secret. Now, I have a few notes here. Because this is our first night, and because there are some here who do not know how we work, how the activity of the infinite way is carried on. We have no organization. We have no memberships, and we have nothing for you to join. What you learn here, you can carry away as much of it or as little of it as your capacity permits, and do with it as divine grace leads you. But we do have, in our little unorganized way, helps in study. We have, first of all, a good many writings, books, manuscripts, pamphlets. And we have tape recordings of this classwork. As you notice, a recording is being made of this class. Within 6 months, this class will be heard all over the United States, Canada, England, Australia, and South Africa. And they will be going through the same class in those places that you are going through in this place. Every word will be the same as it is taken down on that recorder. And so we have had classes in other cities of the United States, of Canada, England, South Africa, and those recordings are available to you if you would like to go through a class that's been conducted in Africa or England or California or Hawaii. That is available to you. And in New York City, the writings and the recordings may be purchased or may be heard at the Gotham Book Mart, 41 West 47th Street, and also at Inspiration House, 36th Street, Madison Avenue, and at Mrs. Helen Frazier at the Hotel, what? Peter Cooper in New York City. Now, at those three places at the present time, the writings or recordings or the hearing of the recordings are available, and any other information that you may desire about the Infinite Way or about its modes of study or healing practice or spiritual help. From there on, it rests with you how much use you make of it, and it remains with those who are undertaking the work to qualify themselves to meet your particular need. Now, in this room, there are students from at least 25 cities or 30 in the United States and Canada where this same type of work is available. Recordings may be heard, books may be purchased, metaphysical or spiritual healing help can be given. If you are interested in knowing about any of those cities or any of the workers in those cities, make contact with Mr. Starkey, and through him you will be put in touch with those who can give you further information. Because at the present time there are many cities in the United States and in Canada where this is available, and I'm very happy to say there are many places now in London and in Manchester where this is also available, in Blackpool and in Sweden and in Holland and in Cape Town and in Johannesburg, South Africa, and Durban and Pretoria. And so you see that in a short while this work has spread to many places, and the help is available to those that seek it. The books and the recordings are available, and spiritual healing is available. And all of this is done without benefit of any organization on our part. Each one has organized their own store or their own business or their own work, but there is no organized infinite way activity. And the reason is this. Once you have attained the ability to meditate, you have no further reason for any kind of public worship or activity. You can renew yourself in the spirit by an occasional class or by association with those in your own community who are on the spiritual path, but you will find that your life is being guided by your contact from within. Therefore, it would not be becoming of us permanently to have a patient or a student. It wouldn't be becoming of us to have people running after us all the time, needing continuous help, for the simple reason that the object of this work is to free you from the need of human help, so that we become an occasional mode or means of help to you. And even your contact with your teacher, which may last throughout all your life, will be a very distant one, I mean, so far as space is concerned, and your contact may be purely through mail or telephone or an occasional visit or an occasional class. In other words, it is an inspirational, spiritual uplift rather than having a teacher to live your life for you or a practitioner to live your life or to make you dependent on carrying a book around with you, except one book. Our students should really learn to carry a Bible with them wherever they go. Let it be a very thin Bible that fits into the purse or bag, but always have a Bible, because God speaks to us principally through the Bible. You would be surprised how many Bible passages are given to us, even Bible passages with which we are not familiar, and we find the need to have a Bible available at all times. Other books are good to have with us for occasional inspiration, but the one book that is an absolute necessity is the Bible. Now, Hindus can get the same benefit from their Bhagavad Gita. Others might get the same benefit from the Way of Lao Tzu. But for us, our principal source of inspiration is the Bible. And to have it available at all times makes it possible for us to receive the messages of God in the scriptural form. Now, even that isn't an absolute necessity, because you may be out in the wilderness with Moses before there is a Bible, or where there isn't a Bible, and God can speak directly to you. But you'd be surprised in our experience how comforting it is to have that Bible at hand, and all of a sudden to receive an impulse within us, or a little push in the back that says, open that Bible and see what happens. So get in the habit of living with a Bible. Now, the Infinite Way has as its goal the attaining of spiritual consciousness. Actually, I believe that all of the major religions of the world have that as their goal of attainment. I believe actually that Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, the Hebrew Church, and all other of the major religions of the world have as their goal the attaining of spiritual consciousness. However, many people have lost their way because of the fallacy that you can pray for something and get it. Of course, the world keeps praying for it, very seldom gets it, except by accident or coincidence. But it still believes that you can pray for something and get it. Of course, you can't from God. That would be an impossibility, because if you could, you'd have a horrible brute for your God. If you could pray for something and get it, it would be definite proof that God had it to give you and was withholding it from you, until you got around to begging, pleading, praying. All of that is nonsense. That is why I've seen in 2 world wars how many days and nights of prayer there were in churches for peace. And I saw the same experience in both wars. When the enemy ran out of ammunition, the war was over. Now, prayer did not end war. And may I say another thing to you? That prayer hasn't prevented war. I know that in the First World War and in the Second World War, that people were praying violently for days to stop these wars, to prevent them from happening, but they weren't prevented. They went right on. Some of you, I guess, can remember back into the Depression, how many people were in lack and limitation and praying for supply and praying for good. Some of them got it from the government. Those that didn't went without. Because prayer did not bring fulfillment to this earth, except in those few instances where understanding prayer took place, where there was a prayer that did not ask for anything and did not expect anything of God, where the prayer was just a communion with God that permitted the flow of God into visible expression. Oh yes, there were thousands of people in this land who knew how to pray and prayed, but they didn't pray for something. They didn't ask for food or clothing or housing. They didn't pray for employment. They prayed the prayer of spiritual understanding, which is an inner communion with God, a touching the center of one's being so that that divine impulse springs into action. And then there's no longer any need to pray for anything, for when you have contacted God, you will find this: the Master, Christ Jesus, never deceived you in one statement that he ever made. He gave you the whole truth. Your heavenly Father knoweth that you have need of these things, and it is his good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And if you didn't have it, and if you aren't having it now, you haven't that God. You are as a branch that is cut off and withereth. You will find a good deal of this in the 15th chapter of John, and if you will read our little pamphlet, The Vine, you will find it exemplified there. When you do not abide in the Word and let the Word abide in you, you are as a branch that is cut off and withereth. But if you abide in me and let my Word abide in you, then you shall bear fruit richly, because that is your Father's will for you, that you bear fruit richly. Now, when you are in contact with your Father, you are bearing fruit richly in health, in harmony, in wholeness, in completeness, in abundance. And when you are cut off, you can pray from now to doomsday and nothing will happen. Pray for things until you're blue in the face and nothing will happen except by accident or coincidence, but not as a principle and not as an assurance. If you want to be assured of God's harmonies, stop praying for anything, for anybody, for any time, and make your prayer a conscious union with God, a conscious communion with God. Don't set yourself up as knowing more than God so that you impudently tell God what you think you want, and even when you want it. Don't set yourself up as having more love than God. God knows more about love than we ever will know in all of the time that is to come. And God's love pours itself out upon us so abundantly when we're in contact with God. We never need to tell God what we need or when we need it. We never need to acquaint God with anything. We never need to talk to God. We do talk to God sometimes, but not for God's sake, for our own sake. What we need to do is to listen and receive the spiritual impulses. Somebody said one time that most people go to God for an audition instead of an audience. And I guess it's true. They go to God to tell God, talk to God. No, let us not go to God for an audition to show God how much we know about what we think we want. Let us go to God always for an audience. Let us go to God with much more reverence and respect than we would go to the Pope of Rome. And I can assure you that everyone that goes to the Pope of Rome kneels before him in silence and asks for nothing, not even for a blessing. because the Pope knows that everyone that is kneeling there has come for a blessing, and he loves to give it, all that's within his power. And so does every mystic, every saint, every spiritual seer that I have ever met. Get into their presence and you will never have to ask for anything. They smile upon you and pour it out upon you. I'm sure God is greater than any of those. I'm sure that when we learn to kneel humbly in the presence of God, whether we kneel physically or mentally, and when we learn to stand before God in silence, or sit before God, or kneel or squat in silence, that you will find that God pours forth more onto you than your own mother and father could or would do if they had all the world to give. Be assured of this. We need to come into God's presence with reverence, with humility, with silence. It is far better to come into God's presence the way the Master did than the way we have been taught to do. The way the Master did was, I can of my own self do nothing. The Father within me, he doeth the works.